Alright, welcome to a video where we're going to look at Shroud of the Avatar in Release 51 and the new user experience. So to do this, we're going to do a trial account and we're going to create a brand new character. So let's go ahead and get started now. We'll go through some things as we see them in the video here, but just to be aware, I am a backer of the Kickstarter that happened back in 2014 or 2013, I forget which one, and this is in celebration of the release coming at March this year. So what I want to do is basically look at where the game sits now, and how it plays, and yeah, give a representation of where we're at. So here we are in Novia, spawning into the starting area. Now this starting area is actually the character creation screen still, so as you can see we're still an ethereal disembodied spirit standing in front of Arabelle, the NPC that from what I can tell forms a fairly central part of the storyline. This scene's gone through quite a bit of development. It's fairly well polished in terms of the scene design. It's something we'll be looking at a bit in the game. We've got our typical invisible walls because being a tutorial scene, I guess they don't want us to be too free to go and break things, but I guess we'll go and start looking what we need to do. So you can see there the sparkly hand wave, that is the exclamation mark a la World of Warcraft in Shroud of the Avatar. And here we have the text box, which is the main method of communication between the game's NPCs and yourself. So I'm not going to go too much into the story in depth, but basically the conceit is that I, the player, am specifically inhabiting this body in the world. So the game is aware that myself, Vagabond Sam, is sitting behind a computer inhabiting this avatar, much like the Ultimate games kind of assumed that the main character was the person behind the computer. So here we actually enter the character creation, and I selected male when I started, so that decision's already made, and this is where we get to sort of flesh out the character, if you'll pardon the pun, and basically try and make something a bit unique. Now, unfortunately, the hairstyles don't have a great level of variety yet, and you can sort of see that the they don't seem to distinguish between male and female haircuts, which that's fine, but you'd want a few more suitable hairstyles, I think, personally. But yeah, we've got some beards, and you know, there's not a whole lot of different colors that our character can have. Certainly not going to have any blue-haired, spiky-haired anime characters in this game. So as we click through the tabs as well, this is where we get to sort of customize a little bit more now. Eye color, fine, and then we have these sliders which do various things. Now, I don't think they make a huge difference. Like, they do let you customize and certainly change your appearance to a certain degree, but we're talking about just the facial area at this point in time. It's not something that most people are going to see in game, particularly you as a player. Your character's generally got his back to you, and other players aren't typically going to zoom in to sort of view exactly, you know, how defined are your cheekbones, what is your nose size, things like that. So I find it to be a little bit restrictive in terms of, like, you just can't make great variations. So you certainly can't break the mold and, you know, make a small round-headed impish looking guy, but yeah, they all sort of stick well within the sort of general template. So fiddle around with a few of these here, and yeah, I think I get bored of this fairly quickly and move on when I sort of decide that it doesn't make any difference. You sort of see me swinging wildly from left to right to sort of see exactly what the parameters are, and yeah, pretty much get sick of that pretty quickly. So what I think we might do is we'll skip through until the end of this, because the character pretty much looks exactly as he will look when I am done. So I'll see you guys in a literal second, I guess, thanks to the magic of editing. Alright, so now we have our character ready to go, phasing into existence, flesh, blood and bone. And now we'll follow the directions to continue on and well, figure out how to jump. It's a bit of a weird jump mechanic in this. You hold space and the character jumps when you release, which to me feels like a delay, kind of like when you hook up a old NES to a HDMI cable. I don't like it, but it is what it is. So don't get excited about that voice acting, because that's pretty much the only voice acting that I've heard in the game, and it wasn't even all that dialogue verbatim. Here's where the character establishes their identity relative to a starting class. Now, that is a deceptive way to say it, because there are no classes in Shroud of the Avatar. This simply is setting up what skills your character will start with based on the answers you give here. Now, the answers are arbitrary in terms of truth, love, and courage. Three main virtues of the game that sort of the story is based on thematically, and these sort of are arbitrarily linked to either starting with skills in archery, magery, or as a swordsman. Now, these are really, really inconsequential in terms of what your character actually will be. Like, if you start a swordsman, there's nothing that stops you from being fully 100% magey, but yeah, it is what it is. So, being the path of courage here, it has set me a path, I guess, of the bow. So this is an archer one. Now, trial accounts used to be limited to picking the bow only, but they recently changed it so that you would have access to other options. Now, here's where I got into a bit of a trap where you're meant to actually be able to choose fighter, mage, or bow, and the flagging system in the game still has some of the old code where trial accounts weren't able to access anything except for that one path, which was the bow path. And for whatever reason, it really struggles with me here trying to select the path I want, because I specifically wanted to go to Blood River Outskirts because it's the new user tutorial area that I'm least familiar with, and I just wanted to explore it, and I knew I technically had access. Now, bear in mind, I have a full account that has a relatively leveled character with some gold and reasonably good equipment and stuff, but I'm looking at new player experience in this. So unfortunately, as it stands right now, with one patch before release, new players coming in are potentially going to have an issue picking the path they want if their questions and answers don't sort of measure up with what they're expecting. So even when I type in, you know, mage, because mage is what is linked to Blood River Outskirts, it doesn't give me what I want. When I click on it, it didn't give me what I want, but if I keep talking back to the Oracle, she does eventually accept my desire to start as a mage. So happy days. We'll do a bit of a jump cut there, and we'll head to the Lunar Rift, which will take us to the Blood River Outskirts. Sorry, no, the Blood River Massacre scene. So now, this is technically what the original tutorial was in its entirety, and that's this short scene here, and I think this video is going to focus mostly on that because there's a lot to talk about in Shroud of the Avatar. It's a dense game, and whether that's a good or bad thing, I mean, personally, I'm obviously doing the commentary here after I've played through this. I'm not particularly impressed so far. So here we have some sparkly elven bodies in front of me, pointing me into my quest markers. Now, don't get used to that, because that doesn't generally happen as far as I'm aware. And we've got a pretty standard inventory system here. Click and drag, and you've got the loot all. For whatever I think, because it's been a while since I played sort of the game, a couple of months since I played, like, just briefly as well. I think I forgot that I could take all at this point, but you can also open your inventory and do the old click and drag. But yeah, so here we start in a dead end for whatever reason, surrounded by dead bodies with not any real explanation except for the fact that there's been an attack, and I guess I'm doing a bit of light grave robbing, not grave robbing, but just stealing stuff with corpses, which I don't feel great about, but it is what it is. And so here we have a letter now. This is pretty much the biggest way that the story gets told to the player. So you don't generally see events happen in front of you, at least not in my experience in the early to mid game. You find documents and you have long conversations where you just get text sort of delivered in this way. And we'll see a lot of that as we sort of go through the entire new user experience. Now, I use the phrase new user experience very specifically because while this is the tutorial introduction scene, it'll teach us how to fight and a few basics. There is another much larger scene that is meant to be sort of the first 2-3 hours of gameplay, which we'll get to. This is about 10-15 minutes, to be honest. So here we have our NPCs. This guy, I don't think he had a sparkly hand, but they're meant to when they've got quests for you. So again, we're not going to focus too much on the dialogue here. You can sort of read it for yourself, I guess, if you're so inclined. I find that the window to be really not immersive, and there's no narration, and the character models, they don't animate, they don't emote, express. I mean, they emote, but they emote in the same way that, your character in an MMO like World of Warcraft might emote if you type /bow or /cheer or /sit or whatever. They don't actually interact with my character in a cinematic or a dynamic way, which is quite disappointing. So we're tasked with running around here a bit and looking for some items before we leave. And what I think I will do though is I'll skip some of this because what we are basically just doing is we're going to be going around clicking on a lot of stuff. Suffice to say, we end up finding a weapon, a dagger, and a desire to leave this bloody scene. So a couple of NPCs that'll point us in the right direction, but this isn't meant to be a playthrough, so we're going to skip through to the exciting escape. Alright, so we've done a few bits and pieces and now we're back here at this Wanderer. Now, I haven't covered this yet, but you may have noticed the text box where I actually get to type in or select dialogue down the bottom. It's something that we'll probably look at a little bit more later when I'm in the actual larger outskirts area. The new user experience as opposed to the tutorial, which is this confusing but layers like a fucking onion in this game when it comes to things on things. And speaking of layers, here is our first taste of combat. Now, at the moment you can see my combat hotbar, which has appeared down the bottom, and you can see basically just clicking on something to target it and it highlights red. I can hit 1 on the hotbar, pretty standard MMO combat, to cast a skill, then it has a recharge. And double clicking allows me to do my auto attack against the enemy, which you're seeing there. And on the right you can see my skills actually increasing as they go up. It tracks that, which is kind of nice. But yeah, and the reference to sort of onions and layers and all that sort of shit. There is an entirely different combat system within Shroud of the Avatar, which is abstracted to a certain degree to be somewhat like a random card dealing combat system, which sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is. Basically, you create a combat deck, fill that with cards that you want to have appear on your hotbar somewhat randomly, although you can select which cards in the deck are available. It needs its own video, honestly. But right now, all you need to know is you start the game for the first time, you will be playing traditional MMO combat, where you've got the top bar, well, the bars on the top left, red for health and blue for focus, which basically, in this game there's no differentiation between, melee, where you might have rage or energy or, combo points or anything, versus, oh, shit, I almost got distracted. Did you see that? Now, that character was following me as a pet. Now, because the game doesn't have high levels of technology, he had to phase out and phase back in as a new object to stop following me and become a interactable NPC for me to click on. Amazing, isn't it? But yeah, so that is the tutorial. Now, I clicked that before I saw him start waving his hand. He had a goddamn quest for me, and I couldn't go directly back to him. So that was fun, and I had this delightful loading screen to think about my misfortune there and not clicking him in time. I am keeping the load screens in as they are experienced by the user. So we get to sit here and wait. I mean, games have load screens, I get it, but this particular game that is highly instanced potentially has a few more. Now, delightfully, we have spawned, and immediately I try to click on the boat to go back, and unfortunately cannot. So now we're here in this scene. I spent a little bit of time confused. You'll see a bit of a jump cut there because I had to alt tab out to try and check some stuff out. But there should be NPCs here. When you zone into these new user experiences, of which there are 3, and depending on how this video goes, I may look at doing videos of the other 2 as well. But when you zone in, there should be someone waving at your face, trying to get your attention, but there's not any here. Now, last release, I was fortunate enough to play, I say fortunate, that's using the term quite loosely, but I did play and I came across a similar problem, although in that case, it was the first time I had played through the that particular map. Now, in this one, I had played it previously in release 46, which would have been about 6-7 months ago, something like that, maybe 8 months ago. So I kind of knew something was up, which is why I sort of run around a bit randomly, not sure what's going on. But we'll find that this is a pretty common theme, and I'll talk about it a bit more in the second video. But basically, Shroud of the Avatar has 3 different game modes that you can play in. You can play in multiplayer online, which is just like any MMO out there. You load into an instance, you see other players, and you can interact with them. And it also has friends only multiplayer, which is, as you expect, only people in your friends list will appear in your game and in your world. And it has single player online, which is you get to see all the housing and the, auction house, well, not auction house, but the items for sale from other players, yada, yada, yada. Great. Now, here where I logged out, it's because you used to have to log out to change modes. And so the fix I used to do to fix this problem and switch modes would be to log out, change to single player, change to multiplayer, change to friends only, whatever I needed, log back in. But at this point, I had forgotten that you can actually just do that directly in game now. So once we load back in, there's the option. I went straight past it the first time. The 3 modes, as you can see, I was in multiplayer online, and that's my preferred mode myself because I do like MMOs. But fishy with some NPCs missing, so we decided to change it now. This did lead me to quite a few loading screens while trying to get through this scene, because let's just say this isn't the last time I had to change modes to progress in the game, just in this one scene. And since this playthrough, I have tried reinstalling the game. There has been a patch, like a hotfix. As of recording this, still got the same issue. So wherever it is, as you can see, huge difference. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 NPCs on screen, 6 NPCs on screen, and the waving sparkly hand that is their World of Warcraft style exclamation point. So talk to NPCs and finish missions. You probably saw a few of them earlier, but we'll start to see a lot of them. When you finish, you get experience and you get gold early in the game. This is very important because you level up really, really, really quickly at the start. At level 1, you're relatively weak, but before you really need to do too much combat, you'll be level 10. And by the time you finish this scene, which is really a couple of hours if there's no bugs, you'd be level 20, which makes the entire scene pretty much trivial. So again, lots of dialogue passing down there. I personally don't find it a very compelling way to read my story, but I did get a cloth helm, so we're going to equip that. Now, unfortunately, generally, there's no real upgrades in terms of armor in the game for trial accounts anyway, unless you get into crafting, but for the purposes of the newbie area, you don't really get any armor sort of improvements, although I do decide to change to dual wielding. So a good example of the game's system where you just basically equip whatever you want to equip and the game will sort of try and make it work for you. Although I decide to go with the torch because it's dark, and I completely forget that I've got a spell that actually casts a light that will follow me around. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and find our way to the elven camp, which is closer than I make it look because I sort of go off in the wrong direction. That's a big sigh, I should probably edit that out, but anyway, practice, practice, practice. So here's our first combat encounter out of the tutorial, and immediately we've got 3 enemies. Now, I will get a better sword later on, but at the moment the sword does something ridiculous like 1 to 5 damage or 2 to 5 damage, and these guys have got armor, so it's a bit of a pain in the ass fight, and my spell, Searing Ray, only hits 1 target. But the sword itself hits 2, which, you know, happy days. Now, pretty sure I don't die here. Or maybe Searing Ray hits 2. That was a lot of damage in one hit. Yeah, so I almost died straight off the bat. Fantastic. The frustrating thing is those particular enemies, they do just appear. So it's kind of like the... I keep making these allusions to World of Warcraft, but it's much like a stealth rogue in WoW appearing once their stealth's been broken, or when they decide to do sap or something. I personally find it really aggravating because you can't really tell when you're going to get aggro and when you're not going to get aggro unless you know where the spawns are. And you sort of heard the aha, which indicated I did get aggro from something I didn't even see. But just one is fairly easy. And as you can see, I'm getting sort of skill ups fairly quickly. So it's a use-based system for skill ups. And again, like a lot of other systems that I need to clarify on, there's a caveat of its use-based, but you have to get experience. So I did mention character levels. There are character levels in the game, and it's skill-based. You sort of need to grind experience and grind skills. And grind is pretty much the name of the game. Now, I'm sighing a lot because I'm disappointed in the game. Now, I don't know whether that's something I should be directly saying, but I'm making these videos in an attempt to explore my own feelings about the game. As a Kickstarter backer that's been following the game for 4 years, and attempts on its eve of release, so to speak, to give the game a fresh chance to impress me, while I am very cynical about it. And part of why I want to do that is also because if I do it in a video format like this, it's harder for me to embellish because I'm showing you directly on screen, and I'm trying to minimize the editing out, so it's not like I'm cherry picking things that just aren't working, and there's a lot of good stuff. Like, I'm trying to keep most of it in there without being too boring. And I just basically doing it for fun. It's kind of like when you have a morbid interest in I don't know, something. So finally, at least it's getting light again. Again, you saw the stealth break from a vigilante, so I'm probably being chased. Yeah, good old aggro. And looting an elven refugee guard there, which I hope that's got a negative connotation for my virtue for the sake of role-playing. Those corrupted elves managed to wipe out the actual elven guards quite easily, which was funnily enough. And they seem a little bit tougher than the vigilantes, at least. So combat's pretty slow at the start. You kind of need to unlock the other combat mode to speed it up a bit, which, I mean, it is what it is. Oh, I died. Fantastic. So at this point, death has no consequences, and you need to go to these unks, which bright shining light, easy to spot, and they reach quite high up if you ever get lost. So that's what you're going to look for. And you've got a cooldown between when you die and when you can resurrect. So if it took me longer to get here, I would actually resurrect immediately. But because I was quite close to it, I actually didn't have enough time for that to debuff to wear off before I would resurrect. But don't lose any items. Oh, and there's corrupted elves in here. They usually don't make it in here because usually the guards don't die like that. And funnily enough, later on, for a particular reason, I actually want the guards to die, and I can never get them to die like that again. So remember that bug we had where NPCs did not correctly appear? So we're in the mode where the NPCs did correctly appear at the boat when we first came into this scene, but now I am... So you see at the marker at the top of the compass, it's telling me that I'm in the correct place. Yeah, because I am aware of this bug, changing modes straight away to see if I can fix the problem means I hit a loading screen. Now, it is pretty easy to see immediately the issue where NPCs are appearing in part of the map under one mode, but not in other parts of the map in that same mode. I've actually got to switch between modes to juggle NPCs spawning correctly in the game. Really frustrating. Really, really frustrating because it generates a loading screen like this. They're not quick loading screens. They are, by accounts, better than the game loading screens have been in the game in the past. And there we go. We have our friend with the sparkly hand. We have a lot more guards that actually effectively defend this instance of the Elven camp a lot better. But yes, we have our friend to hand in the quest and find out, well, basically what we're going to do next. So here we go. We pass in some stuff. So you can lie about your name, and I believe that reduces your truth virtue. You can click the highlighted links. You can click down the bottom along underneath the text box. You can type in randomly. But it's a lot of text. I mean, that is really dense. And like, I just don't get grabbed by it. I don't read it. Frankly, I skim read it to get an idea, and that's about it. But I think that's going to be about it for this video. So what I might do is I'll separate actually exploring this area into another video now. I actually spent a couple of hours exploring and doing the main quest line here. And there's a lot of interesting points, I guess, to look at in that alone. And it's a bit more of what the game is like sort of on a day-to-day basis rather than that tutorial, which is just get in, get done, and welcome to Novia, so to speak. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was a good glimpse at what Shroud of the Avatar is currently looking like. I plan on doing more videos if I want to speak properly, but I plan on doing more videos that get into a bit more depth on these systems and the actual day-to-day, because this is not really representing Shroud of the Avatar yet, because if this was Shroud of the Avatar, I'd probably play it to the point of the story being completed if it was as simple as this, but there's a lot of other mechanics and foibles that I want to explore, including the real money transactions, the economy, player housing, and a few other things that really sort of drag down what looks like a serviceable game from, you know, a graphical standpoint, and from a you know, like in the moment you can sometimes get a little bit of fun, but yeah, pretty quickly the major errors really start to pile up. I mean, look how that guy's holding his sword just sort of splayed out like it's a fucking spoon or something. And it's all those small inconsistencies, lack of detail, lack of caring, that really let the project down. And we're going to explore that in the next few videos. So thank you for watching. If you want to get alerted when the new videos come up, please subscribe. Mean a lot to me. Hit like, share, all that sort of stuff. That'd be fantastic. I'm just sort of trying to learn some new skills myself, and you know, video editing is what I want to do this year, since last year it was all about photography and still images and that sort of stuff. So I want to play with some moving images, and you know, looking at games is one of one of those ones initially. And look, I remembered I have a light spell. Fantastic. So yeah, well, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys when the next video comes out, which won't be too far away because I want to try and get a whole bunch of videos out before the game goes live, which is a month away from, where I'm recording this. Alright guys, see ya.